Can I actually start with a little bit of a hot take?
Please.
Maybe it's an ignorant take.
No, we need more hot takes around here. We got to warm it up.
I don't know if the coaching change from Adrian Griffin to Doc Rivers really affected anything.
I don't think it affected a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. We're on the same page here.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know if people were going to show up and be, ever since Doc showed up, this is going on. No, it's the same Bucks team. I think they have the same warts. They have the same strengths. They have the same roster. They have the same questions about them. I'd probably say I'd rather have Doc Rivers. Like if we needed the best chance to be successful, if the Bucks needed the best chance to be successful, I'd probably go with the coach that has 20 plus years of experience over the guy that's never been a head coach before. So if there is a plus, I don't know. It's probably negligible.
On defense, it's the same stuff. They played the Heat the other day, right? Mm-hmm. They play Miami. And the Heat come out in the first quarter, and we get just the classic Heat-Bucks mismatch where they're like, hey, we're going to run you around and stretch you out, and if you're going to drop Brook Lopez, then we're going to take a ton of threes against that drop. I mean, they were like running the Duncan Robinson offense with Bam Adebayo acting as the hub and Brook Lopez just dropping, and this created problems. Then they send Brook to the bench. Giannis comes in. They're like, all right, I'm going to come out on the perimeter, and right away, two guys on the ball to Duncan Robinson. And now you put the defense in rotation. They swing it around. They get another wide open three. And of course, the Heat are zombie streaky. Like when they're on. Nikola Jovic is like raining threes over Giannis's head and things like that. So that's on one end. And then on the other end, Miami likes to switch. They're a little more agile. And I feel like so much of the Bucks' success this season has rested on Giannis Antetokounmpo's brilliance and his speed and athleticism and agility. And if you can slowly chip away at that with a wall and the right defensive coverages, like what does that mean for the offense going forward in a season where we came in going like Dame Lillard pick and roll with Giannis? Is this going to be unstoppable? How's this going to work? So to me, it's a similar place that they've been in, which means a ton of question marks.
I think there's been enough said about the defense. I'm not sure if we're going to say anything new or nuanced there. They do their drop defense. They don't have a lot of great defensive personnel. They're really struggling at the point of attack. They obviously don't have Drew Holiday. But I do think some of the warts offensively are a little bit more nuanced and interesting. And even though they have two very good offensive players, Giannis is having a spectacular season. Let's talk about defense for a second. If I'm DeAndre Ayton, Ben, I might never attempt another alley-oop dunk again in the presence of Giannis. I don't know if you saw, but recently the Bucks played the Portland Trailblazers, and they throw a lob to Ayton. And again, Giannis is just tractor beam. Like, I got this. Laser-focused, meets him at the apex of the catch, and rejects him.
Let's stick with the defense, because there have been three coaches, and none of those coaches have found a way to get Damian Lillard or Malik Beasley to defend the perimeter or the point of attack well. And in these games that are causing so much commotion about, the Bucks' slow start and Doc Rivers and the coaching change, and Doc Rivers going to the sound bites about how, this was a bad idea to hire me. I love that. But, Memphis, take the Memphis game, right, before the All-Star break. Down the stretch of that game, you have I'm sorry to do this, Cody, to you, but you have multiple defensive breakdowns coming from Malik Beasley or Damian Lillard, either on the ball or away from the ball in sometimes basic situations. There's a tendency to fall asleep. They can be beat off the dribble. They don't provide a lot of resistance up at the screen, up at the point of attack. And this is something that all of a sudden can expose weaknesses in a great rim protector like Brook Lopez, who's already in a specific kind of coverage where you want really good guards protecting you or being part of that coverage, pushing the ball downhill. And it's just what happens to that if now we need to bring a third player over every time in the Brook Lopez drop? What can Giannis be expected to do defensively when Malik Beasley or Damian Lillard are getting picked on or blown by or something like that? I think, given where their defense is, they need to create great shots on offense. And OKC gets a player like Isaiah Joe, who you just that's a marksman. That guy, that's like a 40+% 3-point shooter. You replace those shots with a spot up shooter who's 34, 35%. That's actually a pretty significant drop off in today's NBA. So part of me wonders if the shooting is there. That's why Malik Beasley plays, because he's such a great shooter. He is a legit 40+% three-point shooter. But then you lose everything else with him because this offense, reflecting the defense, isn't that dynamic when it comes to mid-sized players slashing, moving, providing length. So he can spot up, but it takes a long time to watch a game and find a possession where oh, look, he cuts from the slot and catches an extra pass and throws it down on a dunk. It's no, they usually just spot up and move it around the perimeter and see who can. Every once in a while, Brook Lopez attacks a closeout, and that is a slow motion rumble to the basket to see what we can really test the limits of the Eurostep rule. I'm dribbling, I'm picking it up. This is what an elephant looks like if they played basketball. Right? I think that's actually the secret, the dirty little secret of the Bucks is what happens players 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in a playoff rotation, especially in these wing positions outside of Chris Middleton.
I can't believe you brought this up. You've walked right into my trap, Ben. You've walked into what I consider offensively to be the crux of their issues. And that's the fact that nobody on Milwaukee's team can drive to the basket. Okay? Like you said, there's the shooting issue. Right? There's the shooting issue where maybe you don't have any of these 40% three-point shooters. You have some of these role players that are shooting 30-some%. But outside of Giannis and Dame, who are both great at getting into the paint, Giannis obviously is an all-time rim finisher. But if we look at the rim field goal attempts from the thinkingbasketball.net database, right? Here's some of the players that the Bucks have. Chris Middleton, 13th percentile. Pat Connaughton, 7th percentile. Malik Beasley, 4th percentile. Wait a second. Jay Crowder, Ben, 1st percentile.
No, why are you doing this?
The majority of their rotation guys do not get shots at the basket, and that's because if you look at their drives per 36, it's just so much lower than any other team that's functionally trying to drive a good offense. You look at guys like the Thunder, for instance. Chet Holmgren. We talk about some of the spacing that he brings. Brook Lopez brings some of the spacing, but he's driving 2-3 times more than Brook Lopez. So if you go and try and chase Chet off his spot, he's going to take you to the basket. Brook Lopez is doing that 3 times fewer than him. You close out hard against anyone on the Bucks, it's over. That ends the possession unless the player's name is Giannis or Dame. And I think that just puts too much pressure on these two guys who I think are obviously Giannis is just having an unbelievable season. Dame, he still looks like he's working through some things, but I think it's I don't know. It's a weird setup for them, and a big part of it is that none of these guys can attack closeouts. And when they get to the playoffs where teams are like, hey, we close out hard on them, and we make sure the ball gets back to Dame or Giannis, and they have to create everything, it's going to be a nightmare for the Bucks offense. So I think this team is set up to have a drop-off in their playoff offense because of their rotation guys.
Thanks for listening. You can find the full episode of this Thinking Basketball podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy podcasts.